to the Future livecast number 29. Enter the Sklar. And there's a very, very good reason why I say that this week, because for the first time in this show, I actually have a guest. And we spent probably an hour or so yesterday working on getting OBS and Skype and audio and all kinds of stuff, changing resolution, and I still have no idea whether it's going to work or whether we're going to get lots of sudden drop-offs in video, but we'll see. We'll see how it works, and if it doesn't work that well, then I'll just adjust it for the next time. And of course, my special guest is Mr. Warren Sklar. You are live now, sir.
Well, I'm live right now.
Right. Remember, there's like a 10-second delay. So if you're looking at Facebook, you can't tell.
I got camera shy. All right. Hi. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I know. Now, I also would like to try to get some of the other people. Hold on. Let me do some. Ooh, this is going to blow your minds, everyone. Watch this. Oh, 2 screens. That's just crazy talk. So Warren is over there on the right. I'm over there on the left, and we're here to talk political. No, we're really not. We're not going to talk about politics at all because no one cares about what our politics are. I can guarantee that. We do have a couple things that we're going to talk about. We are, I actually started to say this and I stopped. I do plan on having other people come on to this live cast, and Warren is kind of my guinea pig. So if for whatever reason it doesn't work, it's his fault, not my fault. Okay, are we good on that? Excellent, way to go. All right, so Warren, the main topic this week is what you think the next iPad might look like, and I've got some stuff here in the show notes that we can talk about. But there was an article that I saw in one of the Mac sites, and they were kind of contemplating that with all of the changes that have come with the iPhone 10 or X or whatever you want to call it, usually just because of the nature of how Apple makes these devices, usually it's the iPhone that gets like the major tech tweaks before the iPad, and then the iPad gets it like the next generation. So based on that, I have a feeling that the next rendition of the iPads are going to be very, very different. Now, what they may do with a device that is essentially, running the same operating system, I mean, the sky is kind of the limit. Now, there's already some differences between the iPhone and the iPad. Like the iPad, for example, has the little dock there on the bottom that is adjustable. You can take the applications that you use most often and put them down there. And as well as over on the right side of the dock, you have your most recently used applications there, which is kind of Mac-like. So do you think that they're adding more Mac-like features to the iPad, or do you think it's just a kind of a coincidence?
So with the iPad, obviously, with the new iPad, the 10.5 and the 12.9 Pro, it got the faster processor before the phone. And I don't know if that's the first time that's happened. The first time I remember that happening, it was the first time I had a Pro, and I said, "Wow, I wish my iPhone was this fast." So that was interesting to me. That was kind of exciting to know that the iPhone was about to get that same processor that was going to improve the speed and all that. And obviously,
they've kind of gone in a different direction, though, because now it's the iPhone 8 and the upcoming iPhone 10 that has the faster processor than the current iPads. They've got the A11 Bionic.
The Bionic.
Right. Whereas I think the iPad is still on either the A10 or the regular A11.
But it was faster than the 7. The Pros that came out were much, and just use. I have a 10.5 inch Pro and I have a 7 Plus, And the difference between the Pro and the 7 Plus was very noticeable on the iPad. The iPad's a lot faster. So it was something that it was coming to the phone, and you were I think people who used the iPad were like, this is going to be great on the iPhone. And I think it got them excited about the speed of the new processors. And if it's faster, that's even better. And the iOS 11 is very optimized for the iPads at this point. A lot more optimized than the phone is, or at least, as you said, the dock and the swiping actions are a lot more desktop-like. And that was a big complaint people had, that I can't use this iPad as a desktop replacement because I can't. They made up reasons, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it more desktop-like, and it's going that way. So
okay. Before we go any further in this conversation, let's take a look at who we got over here in Facebook land. We're looking at Dave Ginsburg, and we have Brian Monroe and Frank Petrie and Diana Rose. Diana, were you? Of course, we are on a 10-second delay. Diana, is this your first time here? Let us know when you actually hear this. Would appreciate it. But it is great to see you all. Thank you all so very, very much for coming here. And I wanted to ask how it's looking so far. I realize that the audio is going to be slightly slower than the video, but when I go into the video editor that I use for this before I post it to YouTube, that I'll match that up a little bit better. I don't really know what I can do to make it match up while we're doing this, because there's a lot more bandwidth being used, because not only am I transmitting, my video and audio over to Facebook, at the same time, I am also transmitting video and audio to Skype. Warren is sending me his audio and video over here. So I don't know if it's a question of computer power, because right now it's showing me at about 25% CPU power, which really isn't that much, or if it's a question of how much bandwidth I have available through my ISP. I get the feeling, Warren, that it's probably my ISP, but who knows?
Definitely not mine. I got the big one.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. You're like at like what, 400 plus MIPS?
I'm getting the 1 gigabyte service, but
nice.
Unfortunately, wireless doesn't keep up with it. So
no, but and a lot of it also has to do with the kind of router that you have and how many pipes it has, and how many different inputs and outputs.
I've tried them all, Euros and Lumas and all that good stuff, and it's well,
nothing beats wired. As far as going from your computer,
except my wife,
your router or whatever.
But my wife beats wired because she'll beat me if I'm running wires through the house. So that's why I can't do it. So I'm like a scientist trying to get the fastest wireless connection in my house at this point, and it's I gave up. So
all right. Well, why don't we get back to the topic here?
Yep.
Now, some of the things that they've done with the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10 is they keep making the bezels smaller. The little bits that are surrounding the actual screen. Do you see any real advantage to doing that with the iPad?
First of all, you say bezels, I say bezels.
Okay. Let's call the whole thing off.
So the iPad having less bezels I'm trying to figure out if that's going to hurt holding it or not. That's the only problem I could see with it. Is with a phone, you could do this, like that. You could grab it with the hands around it. You can't really do that with an iPad. So you got to kind of grab it in a position where you're holding something. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that could be a problem if there's nowhere to actually put your fingers while you're holding it, because you're usually going to be holding it. Then that could be a problem with the bezel-less design. So maybe thinner bezels, but I don't think you get them
Well,
gone
can
completely.
you think of any advantages of having the a smaller bezel? You know, I mean, as far as what they could do with the design itself.
It's all about more screen. So I mean, that's the advantage. You could get, in the new iPhone X, you could get a smaller phone with a bigger screen. So with an iPad, if you could get a 10-inch iPad with a 11-inch screen, people like smaller and bigger screens. So that's the advantage you'll get with that. Um, Other than that, I can't think of much else.
Well,
Uh,
could they put like a larger battery or maybe even besides the lightning port? And I know this is something that's been speculated on quite a bit. Can you see them going to the not the USB 3 ports, but or like a Thunderbolt? What do they call that? Mini display port USB 3 type of connector, like they have on the the MacBook Air. Not, I mean, I guess just the MacBook.
right. I don't know if they're not putting lightning. If they're putting lightning on the 8 and the X, they're going to put lightning, I think, on the next iPad too in the foreseeable future. But I'm sure they could. Um, Thinner, if this, I mean, the battery is going to have more to do with how thin or thick the device is, I guess. The bigger the phone, the more battery. The bigger the iPad, the more battery. The bigger battery. Um, the iPad should get an OLED screen, I think. It would be nice to have. Um, and, it's always going to be the same. Every year, it's faster, nicer screen, and better battery.
Well,
That's
when you say when you, I mean, what now they have the Retina display now. So, what is the difference between the Retina display and an OLED display?
Of course, Apple calls it now. What do they call it? They call it
Super Retina.
Super Retina. So it's
Yeah.
Super Retina. So which is just a fancy term for OLED. Um, I had a couple OLED devices. I had an OLED crappy Samsung Windows laptop, um, and the thing was slow and the keyboard was terrible, but the screen was the best screen I've ever seen on a device, and it's an OLED. It was an OLED 10-inch or 12-inch window screen. It's brighter, deeper blacks, um, better angles. I mean, OLED is just the way to go. When you see it, you'll notice the difference between an OLED screen and what you have now on the iPhones and the iPads.
Well, do you think that they'll kind of follow the same route as they did with the 7 and continued on with the 8 and the iPhone 10 and get rid of the headphone jack? Does that make any sense at all for iPads, or is the sheer size of it lend itself to keeping some of the legacy ports that Apple gets rid of on smaller devices?
I think personally that if they're trying to make the iPad, if they're going to continue to push the iPad as a desktop replacement, they are going to have to keep somewhat. They're going to have to keep it laptop-like, and if that means having a way to connect peripherals to it, they're going to keep it up. Hopefully, they'll keep up with their smart connectors, and they'll do more things with that. Maybe they'll come up with, hopefully they'll come up with a keyboard smart connector that has some kind of trackpad on it, because people want that on an iPad.
Well, is it necessary to have a trackpad if you don't actually have any kind of pointer? I mean, the iPad is a touch device, so
It is a touch of what a lot of people do on desktops. That I've heard this complaint, and I understand it, is they use it to use some kind of remote software to work. Citrix is a big one for working. Microsoft Remote Desktop is a big one. So once you get into that, you basically get a screen of what your computer looks like at the office, and at that point, believe me, a mouse comes in pretty handy. So, and that's a business use for it.
right.
And then from there might be other apps that would take advantage of it.
Okay, we have a comment here from Diana Rose.
Yeah.
that asks, she sees Apple really promoting the iPad as a laptop replacement, wants to ask us, and any of the people following is, do you see yourself ditching your Mac completely for an iPad? Because I don't, probably not in the foreseeable future. I don't think we are there yet. Ooh, somebody just put another comment in there, and it's stop scrolling.
She said iOS did change a lot, but it still isn't desktop OS, is what she's saying.
Right.
So go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, at this point, for all of Apple's talk about iOS as a desktop replacement, I'm still not convinced that that's what they see it as. I think that it really depends upon your definition of what a desktop computer is. And I've had this conversation many, many times, and I guess most of it depends on what you use your computer for. If you're just getting your email and you're going on to social media and browsing the web and things along those lines, you could very easily get along with. And I'm going to show you something here. This is I have the first gen iPad 12-inch. I currently have this connected up to Logitech Create keyboard. So this is what it looks like. Yeah. And you can see, the keys are backlit when it's connected to, the smart connector, and I get great battery life with it. I have done podcasting, not just with this one, but also with the third gen iPad that I had for years and years and years before this one. So not so much when I'm here, because I'm doing a lot of different things with this computer, and not just this particular, not just live casting, but other things as well. And I couldn't do that as well on a single screen device, as I found out last weekend when I was at my friend Dave's house in Ohio, and all I had was my MacBook Pro that I recorded the My Mac podcast on. And all of the different things that I have going on, I've got a window with Skype, and I've got a window with Pages for show notes, and I've had GarageBand open, and I mean, just all these different things going on, and trying to do that on a 15-inch monitor and keep track of everything that was going on is really, really difficult. So to be able to even scrunch that down even more, where I'm doing it on roughly a 13-inch screen that I can basically just see one or two apps at a time, would be very difficult. And that doesn't include the fact that currently you cannot be on Skype and record it directly through a single iOS device. So yeah, that's my take on it. What do you say?
So my take is people will go through their head of what they need their laptop for before they make this kind of decision. And at that point, they're going to try to use an iPad as a desktop replacement. The first time they enter in a situation where the iPad can't do something that they could do on a laptop is
or a
desktop is game over for them, because that's what people remember. And basically what they'll do, if they don't have a desktop or a laptop at that point, and they try with the iPad, they're going to get a laptop or a desktop, and they're going to use it from then on. It's that one, it's that one time you need it. Steve Jobs said, it's all comes back to what he said. Steve Jobs said people are going to gravitate towards the easiest device to use at all times. And whether that's, that's because the desktop, that's what he meant by post-PC era. He said everybody was at a desktop because that was the easiest. Then we went to laptops because that was the easiest. Then we went to cell phones because that's the easiest. Maybe now watches, maybe implants after that. Who knows? But we're always going to gravitate to whatever's easiest. So if we can't do it on that device, we're going to revert back to the last device that we were able to do it to.
Yeah, there's quite a debate going on right now over in the chat room. And for people that are watching this either on YouTube later or over in the Mac to the Future Facebook page, we do this every single Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So if you want to be part of the conversation, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, make sure I say that. Come on in, talk to us, or talk to me, talk to Warren if he's on, talk to whoever I'm maybe speaking with at the time. And yeah, be part of the conversation. We would love to hear from you. I think, let's see, Brian Monroe is talking about, somebody was advocating, Neil Fairbrother is advocating that the iPad won't replace PCs if it doesn't have mouse support. And Frank Petrie and Brian Monroe are both very, very vehemently disagreeing.
So we have the for mouse and the anti-mouse debate going on, and it's not the first time I've heard this debate, and I'm sure neither of you. But
remember, at the end of the day, guys, we're all friends. Okay.
Shoot the messenger. I mean, it's not something we need to fight over. If a mouse is not good for an iPad, it's not good. But I found situations personally where I'm like, hey, you know what? A mouse kind of would feel nice right now while I'm working on an iPad.
Well, especially when you start dealing with some of the image editors, or where you need that fine-tuned control. And I know some people would say, well, then you should get an Apple Pencil.
The Pencil.
The Pencil, number one, you're not really given any place to put the pencil when you're not using it.
Yeah.
And that's where something like, and I mean, that's why they created trackpads for laptops, so that you didn't have to carry a mouse and you could still have your pointing device and do the things that you want to do.
And again, we're just saying this more or less, for the iPad as a desktop argument. The iPad as an iPad doesn't need a mouse. If you, as a consumption device, it doesn't need a mouse. As an entertainment device, it doesn't. Even
the applications, none of them. Whoops! I'm sorry, I hit the wrong one there. Even the applications, none of them are really set up to use a mouse or a trackpad or anything like that. I mean, they're all set up to either use your finger or the pencil or some kind of hard pointing device that you can use to touch onto the screen. And there are certain Android devices that have handled that really well. And I got it here someplace, but I'm not going to dig it out. There's the Remix OS, which basically took the Android operating system and turned it into a desktop. I was very, very impressed with it at the time, but they've pretty much stopped developing for it as far as I can tell.
Right.
But these are the kinds of things that I mean, my vision would be, you get up in the morning, you grab your phone, and you walk out the door, and you do all, you go to work, you get to work, you've got a little dock there that has a full-size keyboard and either a mouse or a trackpad or whatever, and a display, and you take your phone and you drop it into the dock, and now you've got a desktop that has all your stuff here. Right. End of the day, you go home and you've got the same similar kind of setup right there. Your whole computer is basically this right here. It's all of your data, everything that you need other than the stuff that you have in the cloud is right here on a small device like that, and you take it anywhere you go. You're not carrying a big bulky laptop.
But Apple and other companies want to sell you a iPad, a laptop, a phone, a watch. So they're not, they don't want to put everything on one device and have a dumb terminal plugged in. It'd be nice, but that's, the direction they're going is to have a device that does everything.
It's not a dumb terminal. It's not a dumb terminal. It's just a screen, and it's a keyboard, and it's a trackpad, and this is your computer. Whether it's connected to a larger network or whether, you have only a certain subset of the data that you would normally work with, like just stuff that you would work with at the office, and then a different subset of data that you just work with when you were at home. You know,
Right.
all of this stuff can be figured out in the long run. But at the end of the day, it's still your computer your entire computer is in your pocket.
Right. But again, Apple's, rather sell multiple devices than do that. But, it's good for an idea.
Okay.
One day. But just real quick on the iPad thing, one last thing that
yeah, we gotta get moving. We're at almost a half hour already.
So the only reason I brought up the whole mouse thing is if you really think about the iPad versus a computer, there's two differences, right? The mouse and the operating system. Everything else is the same. You've got keyboards and a screen. So that's the hurdle. That's what you have to think about of why people can't use an iPad as a desktop or laptop replacement is those two issues. And if they can figure those two things out, then it will be done. And that's all I got to say about that.
Okay. Do you think that the next version of the iPad, and I think at this point, we've got, there's three models of the iPad at this point. You've got the regular 10.5-inch iPad, you have the 10.5 iPad Pro, and you have the 12.9 iPad Pro. Do you think that the next major revision of these devices, they'll forego Touch ID and go to facial recognition like they have on the iPhone 10? Or do you think that this is still technology that they're going to have to figure out while it's still just on the phone?
I think they're going to wait to see how the iPhone 10 does before they even know what they're doing with that. Right now, nobody in the public knows how Face ID works, how well it works from Apple. So, I don't think I can answer that. I think if it works well and people love it and it becomes like the next thing and teenagers are like, hey, Face ID me and, do crazy things with it, then yeah, they'll put on every single device. If it doesn't work well and they find a better way to do it or find a place to put Touch ID back on, they'll do that.
Okay. Now the iPhone 10 has a better screen than the iPhone 8 and the 8 Plus. It's a AMOLED AMOLED. Is that how the cool kids say it? AMOLED screen.
Super Retina.
Super Retina. Do you think that switching from the Super Retina to a AMOLED, let's just call it AMOLED, and I don't care what other people say, to an AMOLED screen would be worth the extra cost? Or do you think that there'll be enough new stuff that they put in that they won't really have to do that?
Like I said before, look at an OLED screen. Look at it as something that has it, and it is really a great screen. So hopefully costs will come down with that. Hopefully they'll get their crap together as far as getting more screens available. And I think if that's the case, they'll put it on every device they ship, including MacBooks at one point.
Okay. As far as iOS goes, and I'm not necessarily talking about for the iPhone, but for the iPad, are there any major UI changes that you would make in iOS strictly just for the iPad?
Not really. I mean, I'm still kind of getting used to it like everybody else at this point. I'm pretty good with it. Have you played around with it?
Oh yeah. I put the temporarily, was it temporary? No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something else. I did put the beta for iOS 10, not 11, but iOS 10 on the iPad. The problem is I don't have like multiple iOS devices that I can sit there and say, oh, well, I've got this spare iPhone or this spare iPad, so I'll just throw it on there. And if it completely screws up my day or my experience using an iPad or an iPhone, no big deal, because the one that I use every day is still on the old one. And because I don't have that, I basically don't do that.
I don't use my iPad like enough. I use it to watch videos and play games and things like that. So as far as that, as long as my my games are working and I can watch a movie on the iPad, it's fine with me. I've never had a battery issue on an iPad, no matter what operating system I've been using. I've never had a speed issue really so much. The only real difference I made on the iPad is when the iPad Pro 10.5 came out. I sold my mini and bought one of those because I've always had the minis going before that, just because I like the form factor, and I couldn't pass up the performance of the Pro, so I did that. And I want to see iOS 11 with the new iPad screen size. But other than that, I mean, the iPad is, just does everything I want it to do. It works. I've had plenty of Android tablets and Kindle Fires that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be. They're terrible. They comparatively to any iPad, first gen to last gen, they're just terrible, and they're slow, and you got to reboot them. So the iPad just does what it needs to do, and with the new operating system, it does it just as well.
Are there any Mac OS like additions that you would make to the iPad in either hardware or software?
No, like I said, I would like if I was using it as a desktop replacement, I would want a really nice keyboard and possibly an optional trackpad for when I'm using Citrix or remote desktop, where I'm in like a virtual environment, because those are things that I do IT support. So I'm constantly remoting onto other people's computers to fix them, including Macs, including PCs. So for me, I could probably get away with just using an iPad as my only device if it had mouse support, because again, once I'm remoted onto a computer, I'm on a desktop and I need a mouse, because touching icons is horrible to get them to do what you want to do. So the mouse would be nice for me. As far as other hardware, maybe more keyboard options. I haven't bought the Apple keyboard yet, and your Logitech is on my list too. Do you like that one, the Logitech keyboard?
I really do. I actually have the Apple one as well. Mm-hmm. And the problem with the Apple one is kind of the same thing I kind of see with the Surface keyboards from Microsoft. Yeah. It doesn't turn it into a laptop. There's no hard surface there that you can actually put on your lap. It just kind of flops around. So
that's the same with the Surface, and the Surface was exactly the same way. You can't just pull it out and just sit on a couch really with the iPad keyboard or a Surface or a 2-in-1 device. So, but yeah, so maybe there you go. I would like something. It can't be that hard for them to come out with like a real kind of docking station. In fact, I see it. There's a company called Bridge, BRYGE, I believe, that has something like that, where it looks like more of it turns your iPad into more of a laptop. They don't have a 10.5-inch one out, or if they do, it's not out yet, and it's only Bluetooth, and they're very expensive, which is what's stopping me from buying it. So if Apple came out with something like that, smart connected keyboard, and made it look really nice and laptop-like, I think a lot more people would be into just using an iPad.
Okay, everyone, when we're going to take a break in just a second. When we come back from the break, we're going to go over some of the comments that you've made so far, and then we have a question from I don't know if he's here tonight. Patrick Dillion asked something just today in the Mac to the Future Facebook group, and we're going to discuss that a little bit. But in the meantime, everyone, please. I hit the wrong one again. Everyone, stand by, and we will be right back. Are you a new Mac user or an old hand? Wish you could know the ins and outs, keyboard shortcuts, or hidden tips and tricks to make you more efficient using your favorite computer? Hey, it's your lucky day because Edward Eisen has written a great guide to knowing more about the Mac and the OS that it runs on. It's called This is the Light Side, and it's available through Apple's iBookstore or with Amazon. Better yet, it's not a stuffy old book that gathers dust on the shelf once the next operating system is released, because it's an ebook that you can look at any time you want. It won't get outdated because it's continuously being updated. Information on setting up your new Mac, installing and getting rid of applications, security settings and what to look out for, keyboard shortcuts, some basic app recommendations, how to use Windows on your Mac, if you really want to, that is, advanced topics, searching, using iCloud, and much more. All this for a mere 99 cents. Go to the iBookstore or Amazon and check out Edward Eisen's This is the Light Side. It's the book you want on your virtual shelf. Okay, we are back, and I don't know. Could you hear me during that break when I killed the microphones, or could you not hear me anymore?
I could hear you.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't hear you because I'm kind of monitoring it through OBS here.
I said all sorts of bad things about your hair and.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, what was there to talk about? There's no hair there to talk about.
No, I got
sucks to be me.
Before I'm getting there too.
Before we go over to Frank's stuff, let's take a look over here in some of the comments that we've gotten here in the live chat. Neil Fair Brothers says that feature parity with iOS and desktop apps is another issue. Even Apple hasn't gotten this right yet. The problem is, I think, Neil, is that you're looking at it from the wrong direction. I don't think that iOS is as useful as a Mac or a Windows computer or a Linux computer or any of the rest of those, because that's, it's not just the operating system that has to come into play here. It also has to be developers making applications that use the best parts of what the OS offers you and what the UI will allow you to do from within the various devices that these companies are going to sell you. Let's see what else we got.
I'm looking to. Let's see. They're talking about the notch a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. Read that one.
When we were talking about the phone and the iPad, and if it's going to look more like the Phone X, Frank Petrie says it's going to people are going to get used to the notch eventually, which is probably one or two things are going to happen with the notch. Either they're going to figure it out and get rid of it, or people are just going to accept it. Let's see what happens with that.
Yeah. Let's see. Guy Searle, come on down. I don't get that. But I'm sure there was context there that just went like right over my head, which is really hard to do because I'm like 6'6". Neil also says form factor is too small for a phone to work with all day. Well, you wouldn't be working with a phone. It would dock onto something and you would have like a bigger monitor. Apple is reportedly having production issues with getting the Face ID sensors made at scale. Well, I mean, that's not a surprise. A lot of this is brand new technology. It's not like Apple was the first company to come out with a facial recognition system. I mean, Samsung had it. There were various other Android phones that had it. The difference was they all sucked. Basically, if you can fool what's the word? Facial ID touch sensor. There's a name for it. I can't think of what it is.
Biosecurity or biocentric or biosecurity.
Yeah, biocentric. But if you can fool a biocentric, we'll call it that. I don't think that's quite the right word, but it's close enough. A biocentric sensor with a picture, or with a thumbprint that you've put into Play-Doh or something like that. Well, that's not a good system. It doesn't work very well. Whereas according to what we have seen so far, because remember, the only iPhone 10 that anyone has seen was at the announcement, where there is like thousands upon thousands of infrared dots that are being projected on your face that is not only mapping what you look like, but it's mapping all the contours and everything else. So you can't just hold up a picture and it's going to open up for you. So, the fact that there are problems and they're having trouble making millions of them at one time, and that they're probably still working on the software, this doesn't surprise me. This doesn't surprise me at all.
They're all correcting us biometric.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Frank Petrie says he always thought the Mini was a missed opportunity. If they had included telephony that I could have hooked up to via BT, with British Telecom, I would have been over the moon. Well, it wasn't like the iPad Mini was living in a vacuum. There were telephony options that you had from within iOS that would allow you to do things like that. You had Skype.
He's talking about cellular options. What he's saying is where you could
but again, this is still. Just because it's not a cellular connection that everyone is used to and would understand via a telephone, you are still connecting up with a cellular network to use Skype and other telephony options. The only difference is how the carriers define it as being either voice or data. But it's all data. When you get right down to it, it's all data. It just depends on how the carriers break it up, or at least that's my understanding of it.
Right, but they never came out with a cellular. Every other iPad they've come out with a cellular. I think they never had a cellular option for a Mini.
Didn't they have? I thought they had a cellular option. You could get a iPad Mini with a cell. I'm pretty sure.
You might be right.
I was never interested in the iPad Mini, so.
I was never interested in the cell version because I always had a hotspot. So
yeah, well, I traveled quite a bit, so I don't know. Somebody. I'm probably not here in the chat room because we're gonna move on from this in a second. Biometrics. Thank you. Yeah, Warren Sklar figured it out. It's biometrics. Yes, that was it. Ed Eisen says he needs to get in on this group podcast one of these weeks. Because of the nature of how Skype works and how I can split up these screens, I can really only kind of do one person at a time, but I'd be delighted to have you on sometime, Ed. I guess we're going to move on. We're going to move on from talking about the iPad and go to Patrick Dillon's question. Patrick Dillon asked if we could talk about some of the changes in the macOS, and we're talking about High Sierra here, Photo app, and is it just a layout change, or are there new tools? And there's a couple of things here that as far as the app itself goes, that they made changes to. One is that there's now an always on sidebar where you kind of had to turn it on or turn it off in the application before. But I think that because of some of these new tools that they've put in, that they decided that they always, Apple made the decision to always have the sidebar on. There's also the two new, more efficient video and image file formats, and that's HEVC, the high efficiency video codec, where you get kind of like hardware acceleration where it's available, as well as support for the high efficiency. I gotta read this because my tongue is thinking in my mouth. High efficiency image file format, or HEIF, which promises to be more efficient than JPEG and other image formats. And this is really, really good news for people that rely on iCloud to store all of their photos so that they can go through to all of the different devices that they may have. Do you use photos much? Are you a photographer at all?
I take a lot of pictures with my phone. like everybody else, and I keep them all in the iCloud. I have a 200 gig iCloud storage plan that I keep everything in. I also I don't do much in Photos. I keep things in Photos, but I don't use it that much. Once in a while, I'll do a minor edit. I'll flip something around. I'll touch it up, but that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do use it a little bit, but definitely just having everything in iCloud is
But it's
very
huge.
very satisfying. Yeah,
Especially since it's like no longer taking up room on your various devices as you're out and about. Unless you are on like a plane where you're in airplane mode, or you're in an area of wherever it is that you're from that doesn't have really great cell coverage. Every single photo that you have in iCloud is available to you. Every single photo, and
it's huge. I mean,
yeah,
just being out or being at dinner with somebody, and somebody says, "Oh,
see pictures of your kids or something,"
or they'll be talking and say, "Oh, I went to Greece last week. Oh, we were here. Look," and you just do a search for Greece, and like it's everything you have, and it's people get amazed by that, and that sells people to having every photo they need and basically on demand. It's huge. It's great.
Well, there's a couple new things that they've got here. People in places tagging, which should allow for more efficient searches for your favorite pictures. And there have been some new tools added. And the app itself kind of looks more like Aperture than iPhoto. The original version of Photos, I don't think really strayed all that far from what iPhoto looked like. But at the same time that they brought out Photos, they also killed off Aperture. And little by little, since they did that, they've been moving some of the tools that Aperture had. Now, it's still not there. It still doesn't have all of the tools and all of the functionality that Aperture did. And chances are it never will. But for 95%, and the number I'm throwing out there, for 95% of the people that do anything with Photos on their computer, Photos is probably a good enough tool.
So with that, here's Apple's problem with Photos, and I'll be pretty fast with this. But when Photos was changed over from iPhoto, people were coming, especially to me and to text and everybody saying, "I hate Photos. I hate it." So I walk over and they're like, "Why do you hate it?" I would go into the view and put on the view sidebar that they just put on by default now in the new version. And they would go, "Oh, okay, that's much better. Now I could use it." That you're getting, so they got to deal with the beginner users who can't take change at all. And then they got to deal with the Aperture users who are like, "I don't have Aperture anymore. You need to give me all these tools, and that's why I can't use it." So they got to take both ends of the spectrum and use a program to get these two people to use this program, and that's not easy at all. So that's why you'll see a lot of you'll see in the same sentence you'll see, "Oh, they added the sidebar for the beginners who didn't know how to use Photos without it, and they added more editing tools for the people." For the beginners or people like me who will never use those kind of things anyway. So you're going to get people, confused and complaining until they kind of get it right.
Well, I kind of went through this same thing when the newer version of iMovie came out a couple of years ago. I was so used to the ease of use of iMovie and all the drag and drop tools, and there was actually kind of a cottage industry of iMovie plugins that you could add that would give you like more than one timeline and things along those lines. There was a company called G3 that had some fantastic tools. And of course, once they changed the format of iMovie to kind of make it more like Final Cut Light, Final Cut really, really light, it made it so that none of those tools worked anymore. And I guess for people just coming into digital video, that this was a relatively easy to use tool that gave them everything that they needed. But for longtime iMovie users, it was a nightmare. You know, to this day, I still don't use iMovie. I use currently Premiere Elements from Adobe, and it kills me that I have to use anything from Adobe. I'm not an Adobe fan. Yeah. But of all of the various relatively low-cost movie editors that I've tried, and I don't do enough video editing to expense something like $300 for Final Cut 10. Adobe Premiere Elements for $60, $70, it works the way I expect it to. But I guess we're getting off the topic here. Shocker. Yeah. No. Some of the other new tools is like they have a curves and selective color, and the curves tool let users adjust tones and shift colors and brighten and darken images, and the selective color tool allows you to adjust hue, saturation, luminance, and range selectively for a particular color. And these are some of the things that you had in Aperture that you didn't have in prior versions of Photos. And some of and they actually also have included, there are other simple to use editing tools like levels, definition, noise reduction, and sharpen. And they have some, now, you know, when I read this next bit, I was a little bit surprised because it didn't seem like they were all that useful. This was single click filters to do various things, like various shades of black and white and film noir, and, you know, some of the things that I guess professional photographers who have spent years working on their craft, and they're able to go into a photo editor and selectively apply filters and all these other things to make these cool things. And I guess Apple has tried to reduce it to a single click. The problem when you do that, of course, is the single click isn't going to make anybody super, super happy. Some of the other stuff they have, now this is something that I talked about on the My Mac podcast when they came out with live photos with the iPhone, where you just kind of hold down the button and you've got anywhere from 2, I think, to 10 seconds that, you know, that you're taking video of, and you can kind of select a picture somewhere in the middle, and that's going to be the main picture, but you can kind of go forwards, you can kind of go backwards on it. They finally made it so that you can edit and trim live photos. However, as cool as live photos are, you can't send them to anyone who also doesn't have an iPhone, because they won't see the motion. They won't see the video part of it. And Apple, as of today, has never included any way to export live photos to a more common format, like, you know, GIFs or something along those lines. However, there is third-party software that you can use to export as a GIF, like Live GIF, and I'll try to remember to put these. I have links here in the show notes. I'll try to remember to put them in the description. Or Lively, and these are both $1.99, and they basically allow you to take one of these live photos, turn it into a GIF so that you could post it in Facebook, you can post it in Twitter, or, you know, whatever your photo sharing service is that you prefer. With all of these new tools that they've included in Photos, Warren, do you see anything here that would make you use it more?
As you were going through that, I was playing around with my with the new stuff in there. Most of those new features have a nice little auto button. So for somebody like me who doesn't know what any of that stuff does, if you go in there right in the middle, like for levels, you could hit auto and it does stuff. So there you go. Yeah, no, it's something I should definitely play around with. The live photo things are cool, and you could put live photos in Facebook. Is the only thing I think you kind of missed. There's a way to insert a live photo into Facebook, and it will kind of do that thing for you. But other than that, no, it looks like good improvements, and play around with it.
Okay, so would you say that the improvements to, let's see if I can say this with a straight face, that the improvements to photos makes High Sierra worth the price that people have paid for it?
Yeah, it's definitely worth the price of it. Yes.
And will you please remind everyone just what that price is?
It's if your computer boots up after you're done installing it, then it's still free. If not, then whatever you have to pay tech support for new for help.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth it. And I've known you've talked to a couple of people. In fact, you and Gaz talked about it over the weekend. But and he's not upgrading to High Sierra because he has a Fusion drive, and you reminded him that you could still do that. And yes, while the new Apple file system is the biggest reason probably to go to High Sierra, you could still go to High Sierra if you don't have a Fusion, if you don't have an SSD.
And you can still get the new Photos app and the new Safari, some of the stuff that they've built into Safari, like the anti-tracking and some of the other privacy and UI improvements that they've baked into High Sierra. But yeah, the star of High Sierra is still pretty much the new AFPS file system.
And what you got to remember is people who have spinning hard drives, they're not going to, even if the new file system installed, they wouldn't even see a difference. It's not optimized for it anyway. So
no, it's mostly for digital storage.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no reason. I don't see any reason not to upgrade to High Sierra at this point for anybody. To be honest, if you're on Sierra, whether you have a solid state drive or not, I don't see any reason not to do it, to go to High Sierra.
No, and every single Mac that can run Sierra can run High Sierra. Warren, we have been doing this for almost an hour, so
wow.
I think we are going to kind of call it a night. But before I let you go, would you like to give the good people out there some way to contact you and say, why did you even come on this show?
These people all know. I mean, they know I never leave Facebook, ever.
Ever.
So I'm going to sleep with I sleep with my phone and my watch. So you could just message me on Facebook if you really need to get a hold of me. But if anybody needs to email me, then you know what? I got enough email. Yeah, don't.
Just
find me on Facebook. Yes.
Yeah, and over there, and join the Mac to the Future Facebook page.
Yes,
it's a good time.
Do that. Yes.
If you would like to get a hold of me, I can be reached. Maybe I haven't checked it lately. Guy at mttfgo.com. I am also Mac Pettit over there on the Twitters. We have a Skype number. My God, we have a Skype number. You can call this Skype number and potentially, maybe, get your call here right on the air on the Mac to the Future Go livecast. And that number is area code here in the States 703-436-9501 703-436-9501. And of course, as I said earlier, you can find all of us over there on the Facebooks in the Mac to the Future page. And of course, every single Wednesday night, I and a subset of some of the crazy people over at Mac to the Future, we're all here. We're all talking. We have 8 people here right now. Can't believe it. 8 people here watching Warren and me talk back and forth. I don't know why. God bless them, just because they did it. Warren, thanks for coming on tonight. I appreciate the fact that you're putting up with my nonsense and for being kind of my guinea pig to get this to work.
No problem. It was fun. Let's do it again.
Okay, we certainly can. And
Yeah.
I think that is going to do it for tonight. So thank you all for being here. And hopefully, God willing, and the creek don't rise, we will see you next week.
All right.
Okay, see, this is the part, we're back on again. This is the part where I have to wait for the credits to finish with the 10-second delay. Isn't that exciting?
Can you hear me now or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to wait.
Up until the time that it goes away, and it just went away.